Hello everybody, welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having a great day. I'd like to talk a bit about Bitcoin's future, if you will. So we've discussed before in the past, of course, because Bitcoin is the number one coin. We've talked about the potential future of Bitcoin, where a lot of people are saying Bitcoin is going. So I'd like to found a couple of things online. I'd like to kind of go through them, if you will, because we're at the point in Bitcoin's history where Bitcoin is being, what's the way of saying this? There are a lot of people who you either love or hate Bitcoin. I haven't really seen many people who are kind of agnostic or kind of in the middle of the entire thing. You either have great feelings for Bitcoin or you would rather see an altcoin push it out of the way so that other coins can kind of take the number one spot. Love it or hate it, Bitcoin is here, probably potentially for the next 200 or 300 years. So I'd like to kind of go through, like I said, more or less the future. So welcome back for another weekend edition where it's not just news. I kind of talk about other things that are also happening in the cryptocurrency space, and I try to focus more or less on just one topic. So this will be about Bitcoin's potential future price, even within the next year and a half, if you can actually believe something that crazy. The next Bitcoin block reward halving event could prove to be a watershed moment for its price, according to a data currently circulating around social media. A summary of Bitcoin's price at the first two block halvings uploaded to Reddit by Telegram news channel What's on Crypto notes that Bitcoin prices increased by orders of magnitude in each period. At the first halving on the 28th of November in 2012, Bitcoin traded around $12, if you can believe it. By the second, on the 9th of July in 2016, it was $657. The third halving, due in mid-2020 or in around 644 days, more or less, will see the block reward reduce from 12.5 Bitcoin to 6.25 Bitcoin, while What's on Crypto suggests ongoing trends could see prices hit a giant $10 million per Bitcoin by the year 2023. That is 5 years from now, maybe a tiny bit less. The forecast came using a so-called halving line, which demonstrates that between the first and second halvings, price increased bilaterally 200% per year or 3 times year on year. Bitcoin users who had coins during the second halving will remember that, contrary to expectations, the event had little impact on prices or market activity. Says in the months leading up to the last two halving events, we saw Bitcoin's price steadily trend upward and then power higher following the reward halving. Bitcoin reported blockchain research head Garrick Heilman said this in May of this year. 2 years off the 2020 event, Heilman comments came as Bitcoin's network hash rate continued breaking all-time highs. Halvings can make mining Bitcoin less attractive due to a reduction in block reward size, yet hash rate rarely suffers as a result due to difficulty adjustments. I do not anticipate a significant change in the total mining hash rate due to the halving, at least not in the short run. This was actually someone requested something similar to this around 3 or 4 days ago. They were asking, sorry that I did not get to you. They said, wouldn't Bitcoin then become more unattractive if the reward, as you are mining or doing the transactions on the network, you are then rewarded with Bitcoin? They said, wouldn't it be then less attractive as opposed to getting the amount that you're getting right now? Why would you continue to mine Bitcoin if your reward is only going to get cut in half? Typically, what happens or what has happened in the past is that as the reward gets smaller, the price of Bitcoin tends to kind of go upward as it becomes rarer, if you will, digitally. And this has caused a lot more people to kind of, rather, as time has gone on and Bitcoin has grown, we've seen that prices have increased kind of organically, but also because if the reward is getting cut in half, people tend to want to gather up as much more as they can. So they start buying a lot more from exchanges in the fear that more people, other people as well, will start to buy in the anticipation that there would be less going out there. And as there are actually less out there, as it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, as people tend to then rush to these exchanges to buy more in order to beat the rush, if you kind of want to say that, then the prices still end up going up. The miners then actually still make their money back, if not tons of a lot more, because other people have kind of FOMO'd into buying Bitcoin. But like I said, we're at a point in time where more or less a year and a half, 2 years from now, what's going to happen with Bitcoin is the expected growth rate of Bitcoin is expected to be completely astronomical by the time we hit 2020. And the expectation is that as many more people continue to know about it, as we have things with these stock markets and banks around the world who are telling people to buy Bitcoin, that you will be able to buy cryptocurrencies through their platforms, as more people tend to know about it, more people are buying portions of it. Eventually, there will be a lot less that's on the market. If you have, let's say you have 5 people who know about something, and in 2 years you have 1,000 people who know about something, eventually everyone's going to try and have a portion of the thing that they all knew about years and years ago, in anticipation that eventually, if you went from 5 to a couple thousand, that eventually maybe 10,000 will then know about it in a couple years down the line, and therefore the item will be even rarer because more people are continuing to buy it. I hope that kind of makes a lot of sense. That's kind of the easiest, is pretty much supply and demand. That's the easiest way of saying it. But when it comes to Bitcoin, typically what we see is that over the course of history and people wanting items and things like that, things become rare, but usually they don't follow the same trajectory that we've seen with cryptocurrencies, because Bitcoin has this number of 21 million in general. Typically, this wouldn't have a huge effect on the world, in that if someone made 21 million Beanie Babies or 21 million pieces of paper or something like that, it wouldn't be as rare. But as a lot of people got into the market extremely early, are still buying up coins every single day, and we know that there will be less of them coming out. This is kind of where this entire thing is kind of coming from. But I digress. I will continue on. The hash rate tendencies have not gone unnoticed either, with RT host Max Kaiser repeating his belief that price follows hash rate earlier in August, suggesting an uptick should be imminent. So if you look at the Bitcoin hash rate, I know it seems a little insane. This is when Bitcoin was created. This is where I got into cryptocurrency. It was somewhere around this time frame. I can't give you an exact date. I wish I could. This is where we were at the beginning of 2017. You can kind of gauge that things have completely gone insane. We weren't even above 10 million by the early parts of 2017, and even kind of around mid, or rather very early 2018, you've seen this incredible explosion. And typically what ends up happening is that there have been a lot of news, there's been news rather out there, that even as the price of Bitcoin has declined from the end of 2017, what's phenomenal is that the hash rate has completely exploded and it hasn't really slowed down. So if this is where we were for, let's say 7.5 years, the idea is there's such a frenzy to get into it. There are tons of companies and organizations and banks and governments. I'm pretty sure Venezuela is definitely one of them. We had news as well that the North Korean government was actually stealing Bitcoin from some other country. This was a couple of months ago. So I'm pretty sure there are tons of countries who are also mining it. As they get into this frenzy and get into it and the price continues to go higher, if this is only 2018, you can kind of gauge or imagine what will happen by the time we hit 2020 and the Bitcoin reward gets cut in half. So this is kind of the, when people talk about these crazy price predictions, when they say 10 million a coin, I don't know what I would do if Bitcoin hit $10 million a coin by, that is 4.5, 5 years away from now. Can you imagine? This is not me telling you to buy Bitcoin. Can you imagine putting in what is like 7,000 or something right now, the price of a Bitcoin, putting that in and then making $9,999 million for doing absolutely nothing? It's just kind of weird to even think about. Even if you look at the amount of just blockchain wallets that have been out there. This is 2012, 13, 14, and around even at 2017, the beginning of 2017, this is kind of when the market went a little insane around here. Is this huge uptick, and it's not really slowing down because the more it's, I think it's called the network effect. I'm not really, I think I read it somewhere. I read a lot and a lot of stuff gets jumbled in my head. The point is, the idea behind it is that if one person jumps in and they make money, and someone else jumps in and they make money, other people are going to take notice and they're also going to start jumping in. So the network will continue to expand itself beyond any expectations, especially at this point. And like I said, if we are, what is this, 28 million blockchain wallets out there. That's not including all the other wallets that we have out there. So I'm pretty sure that we at least have 100 million Bitcoin wallets. Obviously, they could be doubles and or duplicates for multiple people. Typically, most people tend to have just around one or two. But even then, that's still, if you want to even lower the amount of people, that's still 20 to 25 to 50 million people who are just owning Bitcoin or fragments of Bitcoin. On the same exact topic, this is also, we are, I don't really know what to say or how to say it. And I've said this before in other videos. We are in a gray zone, and it's very frustrating for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people as well, because you wish that you could see a bit further into the future because you don't really know what's happening. News, when you look at articles and stuff like that from 2012, 2011, I love reading these old articles. I don't know what it is. When they talk about Bitcoin and they talk about the early traders of Bitcoin and who was into it. And if you look at old Reddit posts and you find people who are talking about getting into Bitcoin and stuff like that. And yeah, I got into it when it was 50 cents. It hit $12 and I decided to sell because the price was way too inflated. It was definitely going down. And you kind of wonder if we're at that same exact moment where, yeah, it's 6,400 right now. You're like, I'm not the only one out there who thinks this. It's like, it's always this, do I buy now? Do I buy later type thing? And it's very maddening because you don't know when to get into the market. And there are even a lot of people who don't really know if they should buy Bitcoin at all. I'm not going to tell you. I cannot tell you. Heaven forbid should Bitcoin completely collapse. And I've told people to definitely buy something. This is why I always say do your own research. But once again, I will continue. This is pretty much about as time goes on, it's the same exact topic. And Bitcoin becomes more well-known and or powerful the more people are getting into it. This talks about what's going to happen pretty much to the unmined Bitcoin. And I have my own idea as well when we kind of go through this. And I'll obviously tell you because that's what I do. UK cryptocurrency investment products and research firm CoinShares has called for Bitcoin to get a new narrative to drive consumer interest and lift prices to new highs. In a series of tweets and a Medium post on the 17th of August, CEO Ryan Radloff explained how Bitcoin could follow in the footsteps of companies such as Amazon and Microsoft, whose shares deflated in the year 2000, then exploded to a new high over a long period. For those who are too young or were not around 2000 and Y2K, Amazon, Microsoft, and even Apple were the crappiest companies in the entire world. They were constantly, you can even look up old articles. Like, the internet is amazing. Everything is there. Everything you put onto the internet is always there. And the way that these companies were spoken about, how they were done, they were over, why would anyone use these, especially anything that had to do with tech, they were completely stomped on, especially Apple. I remember when Apple finally had like a beginning of their comeback, and it was just like this really weird moment because all these people were in the news. They were talking about how they had Apple stock. They got it for around pennies when nobody else wanted it. And I think at this point, Apple stock was around like $100 or $150, and everybody completely lost their mind. So why do companies that are so clearly visible in hindsight take so long to reclaim their high valuation from Y2K? This was asked by Ryan Radloff. He said, and I quote, because they need a new narrative. When you come down from great heights, the growth story is harder to see. And most people then and now are investing in the future growth stories. When people talk about Bitcoin or the future of Bitcoin, it's very difficult to, like I said, to see in front of you. We've gotten to a point where we have people who boast about having gotten Bitcoin when it was $1. It went to $10. There was a guy on TV a couple of weeks ago. He was on CNBC or something like that, sitting next to his girlfriend, and he was talking about how rich he was. And pretty much he got into Bitcoin when it was, I think, 50 cents. I think he bought 4,000 of them. Bitcoin price hit 1,200 or something like that. I think he sold 3,000, bought a couple of houses and stuff like that. And then the woman on television was asking him, was he still a Bitcoin millionaire? And I think he showed her that he still had 1,000 Bitcoin on his phone or something like that. So we're at a point where these people exist. We know that people have gotten rich. Other people want to get rich. Bitcoin is at 6,400 right now, having dropped from 20,000. And everyone is kind of like, are we going to get there again? Is this possible for us to get there again, because nobody wants to, I don't know if it's in this article or somewhere, or maybe I read it in another thing, where someone says nobody wants to catch a falling knife. You know, nobody wants to be the person who bought in at 6,400 and Lord forbid, should Bitcoin fall down to 2,000. Nobody wants to be that person. Everybody wants to be the person who bought it before the hype period or the next bull run type of situation. Radloff referenced CEO, or rather CoinShares CSO Meltem Demirors, who said last week he used the Amazon Microsoft analogy when defending Bitcoin's prospect to mainstream media. He said price is an imperfect metric, she told CNBC. I think I just said it was a guy. That is a woman. Continuing on, this is the article that's actually over here. I have it opened up. I'll show it to you guys in a bit. Both in the media and beyond, the topic of Bitcoin's price has appeared to reach an impasse in August. The concept that institutional investors will eventually lift Bitcoin out of its trough has met with increased skepticism, with some sources arguing events such as a regulated Bitcoin ETF would, in fact, be detrimental to the ecosystem. We've heard this a couple of times as well. Discussing the concept, Radloff said that institutional narrative is, in fact, missing the point. Institutions will drive new layers of access and bring a bit more liquidity. No, I think a lot more liquidity. But the reason that they'll drive the next bull run is consistent with every growth cycle that came before it. New attraction from new masses will drive new demand, and this increasing demand will be filled through access points created on the back of the last cycle. The more people who want to play in the sandbox, the bigger the sandbox and more sand you need. Based on those sandbox members constituting 99 million consumers, I'll get to that in a second, seeking exposure to cryptocurrency, if each put the equivalent of $100 into Bitcoin, they would suck up over half the remaining unmined supply, or 1.9 million BTC. This is the article over here. Pretty much what happened is that there was a, what do you call it? Like a survey, I guess you want to say, where they pretty much found out that 66% of Europeans have heard of cryptocurrency, even more than Americans, which is very surprising. 57% of Americans have heard of cryptocurrency, the same with 70% of Australians. On the flip side, 25% of that amount expect to own crypto in the future. 21% of Americans expect to own crypto in the future, and just 15% of Australians, which is funny because they have the highest number here, expect to own crypto in the future. So based on those numbers, the person took all those numbers, they took the population of these land masses, whatever you want to call them, and it roughly comes out to around 99 million people, more or less, rounded, give or take, that if each one of them had put 100 pounds, around 123 US dollars or something like that, I don't know the exact exchange rate, that they would pretty much gobble up all the other Bitcoin. This is why I keep saying I don't think that there are a lot of Bitcoin out there at all. I think when more people figure out, we still have this thing, the same exact thing that Charlie Lee said. When people figure out that not even millionaires or billionaires will be able to own one full Bitcoin, this all fits together. This entire thing, Bitcoin reward being cut in half in 2020, the hash rate going up dramatically as more people are mining and or buying mining equipment to mine more Bitcoin exclusively, not even talking about other cryptocurrencies, especially as prices are going down. The amount of users who are constantly entering the cryptocurrency space, even just through blockchain, not even through any other wallet that may be available, because there are at least 15 other more or less trusted wallets out there. That's not also including exchanges that people have their Bitcoin on. And when the other amount of Bitcoin that is going to be mined, once we hit around, I told you guys, for those who are new here, by the time we hit around 2030, it's expected that the cost of mining one Bitcoin will be around $1 billion to mine one Bitcoin, because it will be so energy intensive. And it's expected, no one knows, that a lot of people will actually jump out of mining because it'll be so unprofitable. But then we have a moment where it's kind of like people have been asking, what happens to Bitcoin when, one, there are no more Bitcoin to be mined, or when it's unprofitable for I mean, realistically, if we get to a point where one Bitcoin is worth 10 million, I think a lot of people would still be in the game just to try and get a couple even like fragments of a Bitcoin. But at some point, Bitcoin will probably have to be updated to be able to not have to rely on miners. And if we get to a point where it's unprofitable to mine and Bitcoin is literally this huge entity that's worth 10 mil, 10, okay, even before we spoke about that as well, someone did a calculation and said that if Bitcoin hits $250,000, $250,000, it'll be enough for it to usurp the US dollar. If Bitcoin hits $10 million per coin, it is probably the only currency that we have in the world, and the world's economy has completely collapsed into itself, and we're using Bitcoin to kind of buy everything. So I think at that point, there would probably be other solutions to be able to mine or whatever the case might be. But like I said, if we end up getting to a point where mining becomes unprofitable and the price of Bitcoin is extremely high, this will only then logically raise the price of Bitcoin even more, because a lot of people will be out of the system or just not mining it, and it'll be a lot more difficult and require a lot more power in order to be able to mine that Bitcoin. No one knows what the future of Bitcoin, at least, is going to be. I don't think it's going to die. I think people take my videos where I'm critical of everything. I'm critical of XRP. I'm critical of Ethereum. I'm critical of Omise Go for taking so long. I'm critical of EOS. I'm critical of a lot of other coins that I'm not going to mention. But as of now, yeah, I'm still, I really want a time machine. I don't know how else to phrase that. I really want to see exactly where Bitcoin will go. I guess it's kind of like cheating. I don't want to really, be ahead of the game and be able to get more than anybody else. But as of now, the wild price predictions that we have aren't going to stop. And I think logically, if this has been happening just through 2018, even before we have any of the stock markets, even just the Jamaican, the New York Stock Exchange, and the German one, that's not including anything that could potentially come from countries in South America and or Canada and or other countries in Europe. I think we're going to have an incredibly weird time in our lives where we're going to be, this is just how I feel, beating ourselves up for not even having a fraction of a Bitcoin, because realistically, if Bitcoin should hit in some fantasy world $1 million, 0.01 Bitcoin is then still worth $10,000. And I think that would be $64 right now. That's spending 64 to make 10,000. That means if every month, if you even for 10 months, if you put in $64 more or less, and you got 0.10, that's still 100,000 that you made from $641. I don't know. You guys know I'm actually absolutely horrible when it comes to ending these videos. I always like to talk about the prices in the future. I know it gets a lot of people frazzled sometime because they just want to hear the news, but I like talking about these things. I like talking about the future of prices and the future of where things are going to go, because realistically, at least as it stands right now, Bitcoin is the dominant coin. So wherever it goes, other coins have to follow. And it just kind of leads to that same exact discussion. One where we have entities like Bitmain and other corporations who are, I wish we had proper numbers or like exact numbers. I think the market would be very different if we could see the results of over-the-counter trading, pretty much anything that's not going through an exchange or like being traded directly. So like, when you see someone trading something on an exchange, you can see the volume completely increases. If someone is doing over-the-counter trading, you don't see the volume. I wish we had a metric to see exactly how many wealthy people around the world have been buying Bitcoin exclusively, not even other cryptocurrencies or people who are mining. Like if we had like an exact gauge of this, because even when it comes to Bitmain and stuff like that, I think we have like random, not random numbers, but like we have guesstimates, if you will, of what people think of how much could be mined per year by this entity. And that's not even, Bitmain controls almost, or maybe a little bit above 50% of all the Bitcoin hash rate. So imagine the other 49%. Just imagine how much they control, how much they're mining, how many millionaires and billionaires around the world are buying these coins, putting them in cold storage. There was a story that I was reading a day or two ago. They were talking about people who own around like 10,000 Bitcoin. They're finding a way to separate them into like batches of 1,000. And yeah, I thought I said 10 million. people who own 10,000 Bitcoin are finding a way to put them into, like, separate them into batches of 1,000, and they're putting them into different banks around the world, like in cold storage until who knows how long. So imagine how often this is happening. There are, you can find, I don't have the tab open here, obviously. You can find numbers of how many millionaires there are in the world, and the number actually grows every single day. The same exact thing with billionaires. I think there's a new billionaire every month or something like that. So imagine, even if they're, realistically, if you are worth 30, 40, 50 million, they're probably, let's say, even buying a Bitcoin a day. And then if we have this number of 4 million Bitcoin that are floating around, and we get another 4 million people into the market, even if we have the people right now, if there wasn't so much fear in the market, this is why I kind of get upset when people sell their coins. I understand they're trying to make a profit, or whatever whatever the thing is, or the whale's pushing down the price. It makes me really upset, because if people just kept on buying, and then we got to a world where all the Bitcoin was dry and it was very difficult to find them, I wonder how high Bitcoin's price would be. I'm just rambling on. These are all things that I think about all the time. Before I go to bed, I literally lay in bed, just have numbers floating through my head of the future prices of coins, what I should buy. Should I buy a fragment of this? Should I buy some of this? Because this coin could probably go to this. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has these ideas and or thoughts. Anyway, I think that's pretty much going to do it. I'm done rambling. I'm very interested to see where we're going to be by the end of this year. I think it's going to be incredibly interesting. And these are just the people who they also surveyed. Surveys aren't usually a 100% metric to be able to see the entirety of what people are trying to figure out. Because I'm pretty sure that a lot of other people, even the people who are planning on buying it, they're, like I told you guys before, when it comes to this, especially like Cardano, XRP, Tron, all these other coins, when people plan on buying cryptocurrencies, they're usually not buying just one token. They tend to buy a batch of them, or they buy what other people have been telling them to buy. Very exciting times indeed. I hope you guys have all had a great weekend and or week, depending on when you're listening to this. Thank you once again for watching and or listening. Tell me what you think specifically about Bitcoin. I know a lot of people have, like I said, have strong feelings in one direction or another. No one seems to be in the middle. Even if they say they don't care, they tend to write a comment that's like, I don't care, but Bitcoin sucks, or something along those lines. Yeah, it's kind of it's a very weird period, and I think it's only because the price hit so high and dropped. If Bitcoin hits 100,000, even 2019 price predictions are putting Bitcoin at 100,000 because of the not upgraded tech, what's the word? The upgraded infrastructure that's kind of being built around it, and the people who are getting into the market. And I told you guys before in the other video, and I had all the tabs open, and I was telling you, like, the entities who are getting into crypto, it's not a mistake. They're definitely into Bitcoin, but I wish we had some clear way of seeing exactly how. I mean, I guess that kind of defeats the purpose of crypto. I guess I'll retract it. I was going to say, like, I wish we had a way to see how much they were buying, but it's just curiosity. Like, how much do these people own? Like, if we had news every single day, not even like a face to it, that some random rich person, or like a list of 5 rich people bought, 8,000, 13,000, 6,500 Bitcoin, the market would lose its mind, because it would come into the light how much little or not a lot of Bitcoin is actually there, or even the other coins. I don't know if you guys heard, this is kind of completely random, but it's still a kind of on topic. There was something that happened a couple of months ago where, this was sometime last year, where the price of XRP was going up dramatically. I don't know how many of you know the singer. His name is Seal. He has like the scars on his face. Apparently, he got into, this is what I heard from someone else, I'm pretty sure you can find it online as well, that he got into cryptocurrency, or rather he got into XRP when it was less than a cent. And he owned so much of it, apparently, that when the price of it hit around $2 or $3, that apparently he was then a billionaire just from owning the XRP. I don't know how the news got out, where it was, whatever the case might be, that he owned that much. But he's not the only one. And I wonder how many, whatever, I'm done. I can't keep saying the same thing over and over, but it really just flows through my head. Hope you guys have had a great day, morning, afternoon, and or evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I don't apologize for rambling. I know I'm ridiculous, but it's just how I have my thoughts. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll talk to you all soon. See you.